मित्रों, आज जिस स्पेस रिसर्च सेंटर का उद्घाटन हो रहा है वह न केवल चंडीगढ़ यूनिवर्सिटी के लिए एक बहुत बड़ा माइलस्टोन है, बल्कि हमारे देश के स्पेस सेक्टर के लिए ये बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण है और इसकी एक विशेष अहमियत।
When I drove through the complex of the Chandigarh University, I couldn't believe this is a university that started barely 7 years ago.
It has become a leader for this movement today in the whole nation. Right. So I congratulate the Chandigarh University.
और जब मैं आ रहा था, मैं देखा था कैंपस को, ऐसा लगता है कि सचमुच में कोई संस्थान बहुत मेहनत के साथ खड़ा किया है।
Totally impressed by what has been achieved in such a short time, and I see a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of management inside of this, and a lot of innovative ideas.
I am really exceptional. It has far surpassed my expectations. I think there's a great future.
And I was really impressed, as I told you, Vice Chancellor, by the way the university integrates with the local community, even adopting villages. That is, for me, a very impressive approach.
Chandigarh University to the panel discussion on Decoding Budget 2022 for a Progressive India. Today we have gathered here to discuss not only major takeaways from the Union Budget 2022, but how these will make a change in our lives. We will discuss the policy changes, shift in focus if any, and the implications of the budget on various sections of society. As you all know, Chandigarh University has always been at the forefront to organize events to provide best of the inputs to its learners. Chandigarh University is the youngest Asian university to break into QS Asia University rankings and also the youngest university in India to bag A+ grade in NAC. It has always been our endeavor to invite leaders from various fields to present their views at events held by us. We have always tried our best to disseminate the outcome of our discussion to both the academic community and the world at large, and we will continue to do so. Continuing our legacy, this event has been organized on the theme Budget 2022, the Progressive India. On behalf of University School of Business, Chandigarh University, I would like to extend my warm greetings to the distinguished panelists and guests. We have with us today Honorable Pro-Chancellor, Professor Dr. R.S. Bawa, Honorable Vice-Chancellor, Professor Dr. N.T. Rao, Dr. Badri Narayan Gopal Krishna, Lead Advisor and Head, Trade and Commerce, Niti Aayog, Dr. W.G. Prasann Kumar, Chairman, Mahatma Gandhi National Council of Rural Education, Mr. Rishu Gupta, Chartered Accountant and Director, BSR and Company, LLP, Defense Expert, Major General Anuj Mathur, Indian Army Retired, Mr. Bala Subramaniam, Credit Risk Management and Advisory Professional, ex-Vice President, Credit Analysis Unit, HSBC, Mr. Mohammed Mateen, ex-Senior Vice President, FNA, Berger Paints India Limited, British Paints Division, Dr. Meenal Sharma Jagtap, Joint Director, National Institute of Labor Economics, Research and Development, Niti Aayog, Professor Dr. Nilesh Arora, Director, University School of Business, Chandigarh University, Executive Director, Management, Dr. Hardeep Singh Anand, University School of Business, Chandigarh University, Dr. Nikhil Varghese, Head of Department, MBA, University School of Business, Chandigarh, and Dr. Pradeep Kumar, Event Coordinator and Faculty Member, University School of Business, Chandigarh University. I welcome you all. Light symbolizes brightness and prosperity. In spiritual word, light means life. Like every other auspicious occasion, let's start this event by offering our prayers to Ma Saraswati and conduct our digital lamp lighting ceremony as a tribute to Mother Saraswati, the goddess of knowledge.
या शुभ्रवस्त्रावृता या वीणावरदण्डमण्डिता धृतिभिः देवैः सदा वन्दिता
Now, I would like
amount. Somewhere or the other, you are part of that number. Realize, if every student can realize that, yes, this budget is not just a question of numbers, it's I am part of that budget and I am contributing to the progress of the country, then I think we as a university would have achieved success of conducting this event and inviting all the distinguished panelists with us. Sir, I would like to make an appeal to all of you, sir, that we would be, as a university, like to have you more and more, not as just one panelist for about, say, about 2-3 hour session. Your knowledge is important for us. Your knowledge is important for country's progress. Your knowledge is important for country's progress through the next generation. That's our students. Please do come visit our university. Please pass your knowledge to the future generations, so that whatever Honorable Prime Minister and Honorable the government of the day is envisaging the future of India, we together will contribute to the progress of this country, sir. So I extend an invitation to you. Also wish all the organizers a very wonderful event, and please take notes. And at the end of the day, let's see what is that we as a Chandigarh University are going to gain from this this panel discussion and make use in country's progress. That will be my request to all the organizers. With that, I wish the event very big success. Unfortunately, I got a few meetings lined up. I may not be part of the event, but I will try to be there as much as possible to listen to all of you, sir. With that, I wish you all the best and thank you very much. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now I would like to invite Honorable Pro-Chancellor, Professor Dr. R.S. Bawa, the man of distinct vision and a fountainhead of illuminating ideas, having academic and administrative experience of 48 years. Dr. Bawa has published more than 100 article research papers, have been chairperson of NAC peer teams for assessment of more than 50 institutions, have visited 178 countries across 142 cities and much more. It's an honor, sir, to have you with us today to address the audience. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I also, on behalf of Chandigarh University, would like to appreciate the panelists, distinguished panelists. And I'm sure this is a very important area. And I must compliment the School of Business, its executive director and all colleagues. Because, you know, sometimes the budget document has been very simple statement of facts and putting out figures, and then, you know, the common man can make out something out of it. But as we progressed over the years, the things have become more complicated. And I do appreciate, because the title of today's webinar, Decoding the Budget, actually it is decoding. Like, you know, the figures simply are not really representing what it actually represents. So I'm sure distinguished panelists, they'll be speaking on different areas of their expertise, especially the people from Niti Aayog. And I also extend a very warm welcome to you on behalf of the Honorable Chancellor and the whole university. What I understand from the budget is a couple of things which are very distinct about this budget. The first one is this year our budget size is 39.45 trillion Indian rupees. So, and this also shows about capital expenditure having an increase of about 35.4%. I think this is very significant in the sense that creating infrastructure and spending on capital projects, I think needs to be a hallmark of the budget. Also, what I appreciate personally is about 3.8 crore houses to get potable water, clean drinking water. I think that's really, really commendable kind of thing. And I would say it was long overdue. Highways, spending about 20,000 crore rupees on that, linking of 5 rivers. All these things are distinct kind of features of this budget. And I think sometimes we miss a very important point, 2.2 lakh Anganwadis to be expanded. I'm sure they're going to play a very great role in implementation of NEP, because the first 3 years of schooling, as we call, before starting off first, I think Anganwadis have to play a very important role, but I think, to my mind, this is a very, very important area where the government has taken a very right kind of decision. Cooperative society is getting some benefit. Then creating jobs, something like 60 lakh jobs, maybe over a slightly longer period. So all these things are very important. But I think I would also like, as an individual, I would like the distinguished experts to kindly do also throw light on how this budget is going to address the crucial problems of the economy at the moment. I mean, from the economic point of view, there has been a sluggish demand in some areas. So I think that needs to be addressed. Then during COVID, a lot of loss to the informal sector and the lower section of the society. I think these figures are known to everyone, that how much they have lost during the last 2 years or so. So I think does this budget also provide some kind of indirect support or indirect answers to those questions? Unemployment per se is a big issue, and it continues to be so. So I think these are a few things which, of course, we can make out if we start discussing, but I would like the experts to throw light on these things, which will go a long way in really decoding the budget and also making our students understand. Our Honorable Vice Chancellor said that the real meaningful discussion will be when our students, they start feeling interested in this. And I think all the experienced panelists, and whenever we hold any such meets, our main objective is to bring the youth to the mainstream. Let them also start owning the systems, participating in the system, discussing, and then coming out with some solutions maybe for the future. So with these words, I once again appreciate and I convey my best wishes. I'm sure I'm going to learn a lot from the distinguished panelists who will be talking about their own distinguished and expert areas. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, sir. We feel really privileged to have your supervision with us at all times possible. So let's just start the event. So as we all know, budget is an important tool of financial administration, in addition to being the most powerful instrument of legislative control and of executive management. Budgeting involves the largest number of policy questions in the course of making the fiscal decisions, highest among all large economies. The effects of government budget on society and the political economy are of considerable concern to economists as well as to the consumer and taxpayers. The overall sharp rebound and recovery of the economy from the adverse effects of the pandemic is reflective of our country's strong resilience. Paving the way for progressive development of India, the Union Budget 2022 emphasized on 4 priorities: PM Gati Shakti, inclusive development, productivity enhancement and investment, sunrise opportunities, energy transition, and climate action. For youth and young generation, this year budget highlighted the importance of digital learning. It is a true honor to have distinguished panelists with us today to shed light on the implications of budget 2022. Now, I would like to brief everyone about the event format we would be following today. Each panelist is expected to speak for 12 to 15 minutes, followed by 2-minute deliberations, which will be made by other distinguished panelists. For the audience and participants, I would like to inform that we will be available on 3 platforms today: Zoom, YouTube, and Facebook. Feedback form will be shared during the session on these platforms. E-certificates will be shared on your registered email IDs within 2-3 days. So let me just begin by inviting our first panelist, Dr. W.G. Prasann Kumar, who is the chairman of Mahatma Gandhi National Council of Rural Education. Agriculture plays a vital role in the Indian economy. The degree to which agriculture represents a share of the rural economy and hence its relative importance as a sector determines its potential economic contribution to rural development. Moving on to the theme, I invite Dr. W.G. Prasann Kumar, who is the chairman of Mahatma Gandhi National Council of Rural Education, to shed light on how sensitive issues like agriculture and rural development have been addressed in Budget 2022. A master trainer for civil services candidates, he conducts intensive training programs periodically at the behest of nationally recognized training institutes. He is currently actively involved in promoting higher education curriculum addressing rural concerns in India. He is avidly involved in promoting environmental activities. I invite you, sir.
Thank you, esteemed Kaur. Thank you, Pradeep ji, for inviting me to this program. I'm thankful to Professor N.T. Rao and Professor Baba. We have amidst us Major General Anush Mathur, Professor Hardeep Singh ji, Rishi Gupta ji, and Balasubramaniam ji, along with Mohammad Mateen ji and Dr. Nilesh Arora ji. Thank you so much for considering me to be part of this panel. It's an important occasion to meet on the conclusive presentation of the budget and the starting of discussion on the budget in the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. As budget is an annual financial statement and also an act which gets passed in the Parliament every year. Budget gives us opportunities for looking at what is there in it for my area. So everybody looks at, as soon as the budget is announced, everybody looks at what is in it for me. So now we have more than 1,000 students directly and several others indirectly connected. So student also is looking at what is in it for me. That's the point which we also try to address during this discussion. This budget definitely has laid importance to rural roads connectivity, with 36% increase in rural roads, which would mean that connectivity will be increased, which would mean that the economic engine has very good fuel in it. We also have a vibrant village scheme to handle the far-flung areas that are remotely located. But
sorry to interrupt you, sir. Sir, actually, I think your mic is not working properly. There is some issue in voice.
Is there a...
The voice is not clear, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
You can hear me now. So this budget was focused on rural roads, and these rural roads are important as an engine for rural connectivity and rural development. Any value addition of a rural product gets a boost and benefit when you have the connectivity in place. With the railways also being roped in and preparing the infrastructure for transport of the rural product through railway network and connecting the rural post offices to mainstream banking through the web connectivity. That also is a great step towards integrating the rural economy with the main economy. And focusing on rural tourism and focusing on sparsely populated areas in the northern sector, especially in the border areas, would also mean that integration of these areas and economic input to these areas comes in. We have in this budget opportunities in the agricultural product value addition. That is one sector, I think, which has been definitely focused. And we have rural housing.
Sorry to interrupt you again, sir. Sir, actually, your voice is not clear.
Not clear?
No, sir.
So I think I would request you to please speak a little louder. I think voice is coming, but I think because of the pitch, I believe it's not reaching us properly.
So I will try and raise my voice level. Is it okay now?
Yeah, it's better, sir.
Yes.
It's better now. So rural housing is one of the areas which gets boost in this budget. Apart from the connectivity of the rural product, not only rural people but rural product. Rural people are connected through rural roads, and rural product is connected through the railway infrastructure being upgraded to handle a large-scale rural agricultural produce movement. And then for the large-scale credit movement into the rural sector, we have the post offices integrated into the banking sector and connected for transaction from post office to bank and bank to post office seamlessly. Considering that rural banking has been mostly done through post offices, and post offices have very good infrastructure in terms of people and places being connected. With the digital connect, I think that will make a huge impact. Some of those things which are very important from my perspective, since I come from the environment sector and my key interest area is environment, promoting chemical-free natural farming is something which is very, very critical, very important, especially on the corridors of Ganga. When we are talking about clean Ganga and mission to clean Ganga or any river, what we have is the wash from the banks of the river getting into the water. And if we have the agriculture on the banks of the river, the product, the agricultural, the input which is there in the agriculture, whether it is pesticide or fertilizer, which is chemical, if that gets washed into the river, then the river quality suffers. So this is one area which this budget has really focused on, and connecting the Ken-Betwa link project is another area which helps agriculture. With more than 44,000 crores being pushed into it, it would help not only agriculture, but would also help 62 lakh people and many hydro power projects on the way. So it would definitely help in promoting the agricultural production with so many areas being connected with irrigation facility. And then again, on the sustainable agricultural perspective point, biomass pellets for thermal power plants is one area which will grow, which will, especially since we are looking at replacing the coal over a period of time. And this will provide extra income to farmers and locals who would stop burning of the stubble. Stubble burning is an issue in and around Delhi and Punjab, Haryana. So that area will be addressed in this budget. We also look at the zero budget organic farming or modern day agriculture. This sector is going to get a boost with the agriculture itself, agricultural education itself, which would be going through a revision of curriculum. The syllabus of the agricultural universities would incorporate or would be recast, taking into consideration the natural and zero budget or organic farming. So that would mean a change, and that is an area for all of us in the education sector to work on. And rural management, rural education would get a boost. We look at rural management getting into rural infrastructure management, rural housing management, rural irrigation management, rural energy management. These are the sectors which will open up for the education, especially the business management education. And then in terms of the digital connectivity, when we have the drones helping in mapping of the area, finding out what is the produce and estimating the produce and transaction of or transfer of the produce from one place to other, it is going to be definitely a great help for crop assessment as well as for handling the nutrients or insecticides management. I also look at NABARD playing a very, very important role in promoting rural agricultural entrepreneurship. Agri-entrepreneurship is one area which Mahatma Gandhi National Council of Rural Education also is very keen on. We promote the rural entrepreneurship development cells in the colleges. These entrepreneurship development cells need to get connected to the small entrepreneurs, agri-entrepreneurs who are in this one district, one product area where over 710 districts, the product for the district basing on the produce which comes up, which is largely present in the district is identified. So the agricultural enterprise connection through this ODOP and to the education sector is a key area for all of us to work on. And food processing especially would be the value adding dimension of agriculture, where we look at post-harvest structures and harvesting techniques and post-harvesting techniques, which will help in promoting and value adding to the products. And then we are also having this International Year of Millets. See, if you look at agriculture and rural development budgets, the large share of this budget goes to more than 2.37 lakh crores towards the supply, towards the support of towards the minimum support price, which basically is to benefit 16 million wheat and paddy farmers. But there is a need for diversification from wheat and paddy, especially considering that nutrition aspects are getting important and people are considering those aspects. And millet is slowly replacing wheat and rice in terms of consumption. But in terms of production, that type of change is required. And similar change is required in oil seed sector. So there is an oil seeds sector boost program which is given here in the budget. So I am looking at this budget being a supporter for agricultural startups and rural enterprises, and that being an area for many of the students from towns and villages or the semi-urban areas where the input in terms of the capital is not available for the students at such big level, such a huge level that they could get into being an entrepreneurs on their own. So this is one thing which I am looking at as an opportunity for all of us in the education sector. So thank you very much. I will wait for the questions or any interventions.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your thought-provoking address. Now I'd like to request other panelists to join for a brief discussion.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Shri Prasanna, for sharing your thoughts. I just want to bring in two read across implications from what you had mentioned. This chemical-free farming along the river Ganges is very, very important from the point of view of not only sustainable farming, but also protecting the river Ganga itself. If I were to look at what's happening in some of the other countries, there is a conscious move to ensure that, for example, if you take Australia, they want to ensure that all farming activity, ultimately the water that flows into the Great Barrier Reef, they want to ensure that it has only X percentage of chemicals and they want to bring down the chemicals, etc. So there's a concept called reef credits that's become popular in Australia, and a number of banks, including the bank which I worked earlier, HSBC, had funded the reef credits. So I do anticipate that HSBC and other banks could potentially participate in some of these activities. There could be more vibrant market for these kind of credits in India as well. That's point number one. And likewise, along with this, there is this Net Zero Banking Alliance, where globally banks have come together to ensure that they will move towards net zero and then fund various projects across sectors, the manufacturing sector, the service sector, as well as the agri sector. We could see banking sector participating more in terms of globally achieving what United Nations and all other countries are keen to ensure that we achieve what we want to achieve from a net zero point of view. These are the 2 points as a read across implications I just wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing your views. Now let's discuss another important aspect of the budget, taxes. In modern economies, taxes are the most important source of governmental revenue. Policymakers and researchers have long been interested in how potential changes to the personal income tax system affect the size of the overall economy. Now, let me invite a financial expert, Mr. Rishu Gupta, to speak on this important subject. He will shed light on shouldering the Progressive India Responsibility Personal Income Tax. Mr. Rishu Gupta is a chartered accountant and also serves as the director of BSSR and Company LLP. He is a tax professional with over 12 years of experience in tax and allied matters pertaining to personal tax in both advisory and compliance matters. He has served clients from across cross sections of industry segments, including retail, healthcare, defense sector, oil. I'm sure he can offer his unique perspective on the budget based on his experience of different financial models and policies. Over to you, sir.
So thank you very much. Good afternoon, good morning all. So as Ms. Kaur mentioned, that I'll be covering one of the most anticipated aspect of the budget everywhere, which is personal taxation. And before I dive into the prominent personal tax proposals this year, let me quickly glance through the major events that took place since the announcement of the last budget in 21. So as we would have seen in the budget speech, so the budget this year was presented by the Honorable FM in the backdrop of gross domestic product growth rate of 9.2% for the year, which is which was in fact a contraction of 7.2% last year, coupled with strong exports and robust increase in both direct and indirect tax revenues. Though we saw a mild effect of, say, Omicron variant of the COVID in Q3 of this year, but still the government is banking upon and pegging on a growth rate of 9.2%, which is not in fact impacted as much. We've recently also seen a decline in rupee as there were certain indications of interest rate hikes coming from the US Federal Reserve. So the Indian economy, similar to the world economy in the COVID period, has suffered interruptions and contraction. The repeated waves of infection, the supply chain disruptions coming in, and more recently the inflation have rendered it particularly challenged. So on account of the global increase in the oil prices and followed by the surge in commodity prices, the economy has seen inflationary pressures building up. With this backdrop, the government in the finance budget came out with few major policy announcements. I'll just quickly touch base upon probably few of them. One of the major policy announcement, more so from a compliance and I would say from ease of doing business in India, is IT-enabled accelerated corporate exit facility. So the registration process, as most of us may know here, the new companies is currently technology-enabled. However, voluntary winding up of any companies in India still takes substantial time. So in order to address this issue, the government has proposed an IT-enabled accelerated corporate exit facility. Also, the government's vision of the Atmanirbhar Bharat, it has been proposed to introduce the Atmanirbharta in the defense equipment. Private industry is being encouraged to take up design and development of these military platforms and equipment in collaboration with DRDO and other related organizations. Also, the concept of special economic zones, which came in long back, which was the main endeavor was to boost exports for the economy. The SEZs is now being currently replaced to enhance further competitiveness of our exports. And lastly, the government has also proposed to introduce the digital rupee using the blockchain and other technologies in the coming year 22-23. So I personally feel once these things are implemented, these policies are operational, these are expected to boost private investments in a big way and fuel in further economic growth of the progressive India. With this, I would now like to move on to more specific tax reforms pertaining to, I would say, personal and individual taxation, which, as I mentioned before, is one of the most keenly awaited announcements for the union budget every year. So as most of us would know, in the budget every year, the income tax rates and slab rates are reviewed. Taxpayers definitely eagerly await for, say, a reduction in tax rates, surcharge rates, as well as increase in deduction. So as most of us would know, we have popular deductions like a deduction under an ATC, or increase in housing loan repayment exemptions, any tax reliefs coming into taxation of a particular source of income, like the dividend income, which was recently brought into tax ambit in the hands of individuals, and similar other tax incentives, which at the end of the day results in an increase in disposable income in the hands of individuals. The income tax slab rates haven't been changed since 2014. In fact, one would go back in times in financial year 18-19 to compensate increasing medical costs and conveyance expenses, typically for the individual taxpayers. There was a standard deduction which was brought in for salaried taxpayers, which constitute a major portion of the taxpayers in India. However, that amount of standard deduction is still limited to 50,000 rupees per annum. So it some ways seems that the taxpayers will need to wait for probably another year or so, if not more, to have any such wishes granted. But as Ms. Harsimran Kaur also mentioned initially, that the government's 4 priorities, the PM Gati Shakti, the inclusive development, the productivity enhancement, and the financing of investments, and considering various other aspects of the current economy, or I would say the global trend, wherein the magnitude and frequency involving the trading in digital assets has been increasing, the government has brought in much needed clarifications and amendments, and which I'll now probably discuss a bit more in detail. So as I mentioned, on the tax front, barring few proposals, there were not many changes as far as the income tax slab rates, surcharge, etc. is concerned, except a rationalization of a surcharge rate on the long-term capital gains, which is now capped at 15%. Just for the benefit of all, depending upon our income levels, the surcharge rate on the income tax ranges from 10 to 37%. So they've rationalized the provision of surcharge for long-term gains, which is capped at maximum of 15%. Also, I would say during these testing times, the much awaited tax concessions in respect of the COVID relief has been provided now. Now, coming to one of the major change is taxation of virtual digital asset, or VDA. So let us first quickly understand what the finance bill defines as a VDA. VDA the finance bill somewhere has mentioned that any information, code, number, or a token, but not a currency, which is generated through cryptographic means and which provides a digital representation of a value, right? So those assets would be forming part of the category called a virtual digital asset and would be brought in the ambit of taxation by the government. We would have seen, in the recent past, we would have seen many cryptocurrencies like a Bitcoin, which has been being traded on many platforms globally. And probably our domestic tax laws did not have specific provisions which brought these cryptocurrencies into the tax ambit. Similar to cryptocurrencies, they've also included a category of NFTs, which are the non-fungible tokens, or any other token for that matter of a similar nature, which the government may probably announce and notify at any point of time. I would say this is in line of the government's thought and endeavor of also bringing in the digital currency in India, as I just recently mentioned. So I'm sure as all of us have been either heard of cryptocurrency or for that matters have dealt also with it. In the proposed budget, there's a section which has been introduced, a section 115BBH, wherein the government's intention is to tax the gains arising out of transfer or of such VDAs. And in fact, not just transfer of VDAs or sale of VDA. If an individual gives a virtual digital asset to someone, that gift would also attract taxation in the hands of the recipient. So it's a twofold taxation. Obviously, one, at the time of transfer and the time of sale, and in case there is a gift done in the hands of the recipient. Let me now quickly discuss on the technical and the tax related aspects. So what the budget proposal suggests is the government wishes to tax any income from VDA at a flat rate of 30% without allowing for any deduction except obviously the cost of acquisition of that asset. No expenses, etc. would be allowed against calculation of those VDA incomes. Also, the government has categorically mentioned that a set-off of loss shall not be allowed against that VDA income. Just for the benefit of all, if I have, say, a loss in a particular source of income and I have gain from a same source of income, typically as a thumb rule, Income Tax Act would provide you a set-off of that loss from that income and offer the balance income to tax. It also has certain other related provisions of set-off of loss with other heads of income. With these proposals, the government's intent obviously is very clear that they have brought in the virtual assets into the tax ambit. Somewhere it also suggests the government's intention that the digital currencies are something which the government is focusing on and would bring in near future. And India, one of the biggest, I would say, economy and the growing economy, somewhere recognizing digital asset taxation gives a strong message and a very positive message towards moving towards the virtual digital assets. Though these tax proposals have been introduced for VDA, but there still remains few open issues, which I'm sure the government would in due course would be clarifying. So for example, one of the open issue could be the characterization of that income. As one would know, there are various heads of income under the income tax laws, where an individual offers his or her incomes to tax. So whether these VDA incomes would be like a capital gain income or an other sources income, or for that matter, a business income, probably those clarity may still be awaited from the government. Also, as I mentioned, the gift of VDA would also be taxable in the hands of recipient. As step one, in the hands of transferor, the VDA is taxable at a flat rate of 30% on the gains. In case of a gift, whether that would be again taxable at a flat rate of 30%, or would the individual recipient be eligible for I would say, tax slab rate benefits, those clarity may still be awaited from the government. Another very important aspect of VDA taxation from a government standpoint would be, see how the Indian domestic tax laws function is. The taxability is dependent upon, say, a residential status of the individual and also the situs of the asset, the location of the asset. These being virtual assets and not, say, a physical asset. So if I have a house property which is sitting in India, that's an Indian asset for me. Now, these being virtual assets may be traded in any platforms which are not, say, recognized in India. Whether or not the situs of that asset would be considered to be an Indian asset also or not remains a matter of debate here. So just going logically, or I would say very hyper-technically, if I may say the situs of the asset is not sitting in India and I'm a non-resident Indian, I may still not be eligible for a VDA taxation in India. So these issues remain, and which I'm sure that the government will in due course come out with related clarifications considering the intent of taxing the VDAs. Moving on from VDA, I would move on to another relevant provision for the current times, which I would say was the need of the hour. And the government had, in fact, last year shown an intent of providing relief towards any financial assistances being received for COVID-19 treatment, or in fact, any financial assistance received to the family or given to the family of a deceased individual on account of COVID. So just to go back in time, few months, in June last year, the government came out with a press release which suggested that the government said any financial assistance in relation to COVID-19 treatment or any financial assistance on the death of the person, the amounts received would not be taxable in the hands of the employee or, for that matter, the family. So they have brought in the related legislative amendments implementing this press release through this budget. wherein any financial assistance which an employer has given or treatment relating expenses which the employer has borne for the employee or his family would not be taxable in the employer's hands. In fact, for that matter, in the event of a death of any employee, any financial assistance from the employer to the employee's family would again not be taxable in the hands of the family. However, there's a limit cap of INR 10 lakh rupees if that financial assistance is given to the families of the deceased person by the well-wishers or any other person, I would say, other than the employer. So, but this is a very welcome move. The government has also mentioned in the budget proposals that they will come out with further guidelines on the exemption aspect of the COVID-related financial assistance. I'm sure considering the intention of this exemption and the trying times, those guidelines would typically be on lines of how the documentation or a paperwork would need to be kept by the taxpayer, so that at any future point of time, in case of any audit by the tax authorities, those exemptions could be easily substantiated and trailed back to the COVID-related illness matters. I'll just take up a couple of more relevant personal tax proposals. As we've seen in the budget and over the past many years, the government has been focusing on the trust-based governance. And moving forward with that intention, they have given taxpayers an option to make good of any omissions by filing of an updated tax returns. As we might be aware, the personal tax returns are due to be filed, say, typically by 31st July of the following the financial year, and then a few months' time is available for filing, say, a late or a revised return. However, if the due dates for a revised return or a late return has also expired, I don't have any option to file a return in case I find any omission in my return earlier filed. So going by this and trust-based governance, more so a voluntary compliance, the government has announced an updated tax filing of returns, wherein the returns can be filed up to 3 years from the end of the financial year, wherein there is an omission of income or less payment of taxes done in the earlier returns filed, or for that matter, if no return was filed. The only returns which probably are not covered in updated tax return filings could be the returns where it results in an increase in loss or a refund for the taxpayers. So there are again separate powers in the domestic tax laws, wherein if an individual wants to file a return after the date of expiries, which results in an increased loss or a refund to the taxpayer, they can definitely go for a representation to the government with the facts of their case and ask for an extension. But those are only on a very case-to-case basis. One of the impacted population, which I personally feel here from a compliance perspective, can be the mobile population, and especially the expatriates. Typically what happens, and I'll just quickly touch base here, expatriates or foreign nationals who work in India, they, coming from their home country, might be filing taxes in their home countries as well. India, as we know, follows the financial year from April to March, unlike many other Western countries and overseas jurisdictions which follow a calendar year as their tax year. So due to the timing difference of those tax years, many a times complete overseas related income details, tax details are not available for expatriates in India while filing their India returns when they are taxable on their overseas incomes as well. So this extension of updated tax return would definitely help such population to be more compliant and file an updated tax return in case a need arises. Lastly, I'll just pick up few other prominent provisions. One was bringing the state government employees at par with the central government employees, as well as the contribution of the employer is concerned at the national pension system level. This limit was 10% for state government employees vis-a-vis 14% for central government employees, which has further been now increased to 14% to map it and bring it at par with the central government employees. So I think in the interest of time, I'll restrict my discussion to these proposals. And as one would go back to the budget speech, and the Honorable Finance Minister mentioned a slok from the Mahabharata, which essentially meant that the king must make arrangements for the welfare of the population and governing the state, which is in line with the Dharma, along with the collecting taxes, which are again in consonance with the Dharma. So I think with these proposals, the thought process of the government, and obviously the taxpayers contributing to the progression of India, the responsibility and the burden is being shared, and we look forward to India at 100 as a much stronger and a nation which is known globally for its infrastructure, its reforms, and similar things. So with this, I end my discussion, and happy to take any questions, inputs from the other panelists, and also during the Q&A part. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your valuable insights. I hope the government move toward digital currency and digitalization in banking sector and in taxation sector will prove to be a boom for the Indian economy.
Asma Kaur, can I add some point?
Yes, sir.
See, whatever Mr. Rishu Gupta has said about income tax, one of the biggest dilemma going on in the economy is no tax relief to the individuals. I mean, why it is so? And therefore, it is very important for the students, they should know why government has not given any tax reliefs to individuals. And the answer is there in the act itself.
Right.
There are two regimes going on at present: tax regime and the new regime. Therefore, if I am looking for the tax relief, then what I'm doing, I'm giving sort of benefits, undue benefits to the tax relief people as against the people who are filing their new tax regime returns. So that is the reason that government doesn't want to do discrimination, and government wants to watch that how is the new tax regime is being implemented. And as on date, the data says 86% of the corporates are following the new tax regime return, as against individuals are far, far behind. So that is the reason. So what I'm trying to say this point to all of you is that when you come across such type of issues from your people, you have to give a very concrete reasons why government has not done. So this is the reason, and hopefully, if government wants that we should have implementation of a new tax regime, which is more beneficial, which is progressive in nature. So let's hope that with increase in the compliance, and we come to a stage when we are only going to follow the new tax regimes, then we may see again further relief in various forms. So this is what I want to say. And number two, I just want to add to Rishu Kumar, when he was talking about the virtual digital assets. See, he has talked very nicely about all the challenges as far as the income tax is concerned. You know, valuation challenge, transaction challenge. I mean, what on profit challenges. There's another issue which is very much there is the GST challenge. Are we going to treat this sale of virtual currency as assets? Or
very valid point, yeah.
Or actionable claim. Now I'm just going into that little depth of the GST. There are two concepts called actionable claim and the goods and services. For example, if startup is issuing a Bitcoin to their employees, will it be GST applicable? Because when I'm giving the Bitcoin coin to my employees, it's an actionable claim. I'm not selling. There's no goods and services. So there are many dynamics in the GST, and a lot has to be done. In my opinion, a lot of work has to be done on this subject so that we bring transparency in the coming months. So let's hope that government, my personal view is that government should not kill the goose. I mean, let's not treat Bitcoin as a bad thing. Let's see, how can we, there are countries in the world, they've adopted the Bitcoins as their national currency. So why we cannot think on that line? Let's be progressive. However, yes, wherever there is a scope for taxation, where there is a scope for curtailing the wrong practices, wrongdoing, we must do it. So this is what I wanted to add here on virtual digital assets. I'm sure Mr. Kumar will agree with me, whatever I have said just now.
Thank you so much. Very valid points on both the aspects of the tax rate regime as well as the VDAs. In fact, just one point to supplement on where you mentioned that the government has had a new tax rate regime, which is a lower tax rate regime. And obviously the intent of the government is, see, the corporate tax rates have been declining over the last few years. And that's been the intention. The government wants to reduce corporate tax rates because they want to come at the global levels. Similarly, if we talk about individual tax rates, barring few countries, so like, for example, if I take an example of US tax rates also, the highest tax rates goes up to 40%. India's highest tax rate currently is approximately 43%. But yes, India last year, we came out with the optional new tax rate regime, obviously, which has a higher slab rates and a reduced tax rates for, I would say, the middle income group. One of the prime reason, I would say, that which is the new tax rate regime is not, optioned, taken by the individuals, is currently it allows for many disallowances of deductions which are otherwise available to me, like investment related deductions and the like. So with time, obviously one would expect that to make it more lucrative to the individuals to opt for the new tax rate or the lower regime, those disallowances of deductions should also go away, which probably brings in the real benefits of the optional tax rate regime. But yes, last year's budget, this was a very welcome move, and one would look forward to having this more benefits in the years to come.
Thank you, sir.
I just have only one point. I'm conscious of time. I'll just take only 30 seconds. Mr. Mohammed Mateen mentioned that there are some countries which had adopted Bitcoin as a national currency. I just want to make a point here. Maybe we can discuss it separately. Any country in its economic wisdom will never accept or will never institute a Bitcoin as a national currency. If at all, there are initiatives going on globally to look at central bank digital currency and not Bitcoin as a national currency. It will completely beat all the fundamental principles of economics. So I just wanted to make that point for the benefit of the students.
Sir, I will give you the name of the country.
Yes, please.
I will provide you the name of the countries who have implemented formally.
Okay.
I have this with me. I'll share with you separately.
Sure, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. So we will be unfolding the future of digital currency in future. So with this note, before moving to the next panelist, first I would like to welcome Dr. Badri Narayan Gopal Krishna on board. I welcome you, sir, on behalf of University School of Business, Chandigarh University. Now, let's proceed to the next panelist. The defense industry of India, as we all know, and reduced dependence on imports of defense equipment has been seen undertakings to be the flag bearer of capabilities in the sector needs is the need of the hour. To discuss such initiatives and issues and its impact on the economy and the country, let me invite our next panelist, Major General Anuj Mathur, who is a defense expert. Major General Mathur is a motivational speaker and is also actively involved in spreading awareness concerning national security. He is also an expert on geopolitical and geostrategic issues. He is actively involved in social service post his superannuation from the Great Indian Army Institution. I'm confident he will be able to analyze budget 2020, taking into account these key perspectives. I welcome you, sir.
Thank you very much, Simran. It was such a great pleasure. And thank you for having given me this opportunity to be amongst such elite experts and to be talking to the future of this great country, the students. I want to start my talk with a quote. And that quote is in Hindi by one of the greatest strategists and thinkers this mankind, the world has ever seen, Chanakya. And the quote goes like this: एक शांतिप्रिय राजा को भी विशाल सेना का निर्माण करना चाहिए ताकि उसके राष्ट्र पर आक्रमण करने की सोच भी दुश्मन को आतंकित कर दे. It is very simple. It says, even if you are peace loving, even if you are in fact only a nation which is strong can be peace loving. If you are not strong, if you do not have powerful defense mechanism, the peace will elude you. Probably we missed out this in the beginning of our independent journey. And the results are there in front of us. 62, 65, and I'm not getting into a debate on the historical issues, but the fact of the matter is that a defense or a force is extremely important pillar of comprehensive national power. Another thing which I would like to quote is the 13th edict, or maybe I may be wrong in the number, edict of Ashoka the Great. When he was shifting from Raj to Dham, he had made it very clear that now I have denounced any offensive and any activity of this kind. But if there is any state under my control which behaves like Kalinga, will be given the treatment like Kalinga. Even after having given up the aggression, the Ashok the Great was, in fact, he was the great because of that. Having said that, I would now like to tell you that national security and economics are very, very closely interlinked. I have said you must maintain army. I have said you must maintain a great powerful force. But this directly relates to the kind of economy you have. If your economy is vibrant, you will be able to allot more to the maintenance of defense. It's a vicious cycle. And you have to, as a good country, strike a perfect balance between the two. This year's budget, my dear children, I will address more to the children because they are the people who have to understand what it means. This year's budget builds on what had happened in recent couple of years. And it gives a great opening, a great opportunity for the nation on the direct vision of the Pradhan Mantri, Atmanirbharta. If you want me to summarize the defense budget of this year, 2 words: indigenization and modernization. Indigenization is the key, and modernization is very important. India geopolitically lies amidst a very volatile and I dare say adversified, a volatile and adversified environment. You have 2 nuclearly armed neighbors, an arrogant China, a malicious Pakistan, and they both are trying to create situation within India. So because of which our nation is faced with tremendous security challenges, both internal and external. In addition to that, the China's growing influence in the Indian Ocean region is also a cause of grave concern. Now, when we demystify the budget, defense budget, we will realize that this is what it actually caters for. Now, defense budget is one thing which I'm afraid not many people may be aware. It has 4 components, major components. Unless you understand those components, it's so very easy to say that 5 lakh crore has been set aside for the defense. Now, you must know where all this 5 lakh crore goes. There is a revenue head which goes into the salaries and maintenance of the establishment, maintenance of the equipment, paying up for the services that you are acquiring, paying up for the, say, for example, rental for the satellites, and flying for search and your intelligence and other missions. The second main component is the capital, which is the heart of defense budget. Why I say heart? Because that capital is the one which is utilized for modernizing your armed forces. Other 2 smaller ones, one is defense civil, which takes care of the civil establishment and the Indian Coast Guard. And another major chunk is pensions. So we will not talk of 5 lakh crore. We will talk of 1.52 lakh crore. Because that 1.52 lakh crore is the thing which is available to you for the modernization and equipping the army to meet the challenges, both internal and external, in all dimensions. Sea, air, and land. Now, I will tell you that there has always been the difference between, the desires, the wish list, and the amount which is available. I'll quote a few statistical figures. In 2020-21, the Standing Committee on Defense had observed a huge difference in the demand for the capital outlay and availability of the capital outlay. It was approximately 15,000 crore for the army, nearly 38,000 crore for the navy, and 24,000 crore approximately. I mean, these figures are for the Air Force. In 2018, Lok Sabha's Standing Committee had recommended that India, in fact, the Chanakya had also said way back that India must spend up to 3% of the GDP on defense. But our defense outlays over the years have hovered around 2%, which includes the pensions and the salaries. So the fact of the matter is that you have to understand. Now, having said that, in the same breath, I want to tell you that we have to cater for many other things when you are giving a budget. And more often than not, the allotments, the outlays for the defense are possibly at the cost of some other developmental activities. So you have to strike, as I said in the beginning, a perfect balance. Now, what I will do is I will, little bit go into the statistics that how the capital budget is going to be utilized. The capital 1.52, the bulk has gone to the Indian Navy. In addition to that, also the Indian Coast Guard's budget has gone up good 35%. So this shows clearly the India's concern, because the budgetary allocations are driven by the assessment of the threat, assessment of the security requirements of the nation. And we are very sure that the increasing Chinese presence and increasing presence of many other belligerent nations in the Indian Ocean region, Gwadar, Hambantota, somewhere in Maldives, all these activities of the Chinese, taking care of your own exclusive economic zones, particularly in the island territories of yours, both on the eastern seaboard, on the eastern sea and the western Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea. So accordingly, a major chunk has been given to the Indian Navy when it comes to the capital allotment. The second chunk has gone to the Air Force. Although the increase for the Air Force is just about 4.5%. But what must be understood, that we have a fairly aging fleet of the fighter aircrafts. And there is a very urgent need for us to make sure that we get into a proper modernization and acquisition plan for the Indian Air Force. We are still flying MiG-21s, popularly known as flying coffins. So there is a need for us to find a way to get to the best of the fighting capability as far as the Indian Air Force is concerned. When it comes to Army, actually the Army's share for capital budget has gone down to 12%. When it has gone down 12%, the reason is probably Army could not spend it the current financial year, the allotted amount of money in this head. But we need to go into the reasons why the Army could not do it. Now, important takeaways from the budget. Another thing which impacts the defense budget is the domestic defense equipment. We are getting into a time when we are wanting military transformations and industrial transformations connected to the armed forces, to the defense. So these transformations are the ones which are deriving the budgetary allocations as far as defense is concerned. Now, having said Atmanirbharta, how the government or the finance minister at this time around has done that push towards Atmanirbharta. The 68% of the capital outlay for the defense forces has to be spent on the domestic procurements. But it's easier said than done. I will come to that slightly later. It is then in the DRDO, in the Defense Research and Development, 25% of the allocation of the budget has been kept for the first time for the private partners, private industry, the startups, the MSMEs to do it on a RPB model or whatever the model. I hope we all understand what that model is. So what is happening is that the government is trying to reduce dependence on the import. But India continues to be the second largest importer of the defense equipment after Saudi Arabia, I think. I would like to quote that from 16 to 20, in those 5 years, the import dependency as far as the defense equipment and the things are concerned has come down 33%. But there is a proper need for us to bring it further down. The defense corridors in UP and Tamil Nadu. Now, I would like to tell you something very important. Having neglected the industry, defense industry for decades, you can't expect the same industry to come up overnight and get into the cutting edge, high-end technology, get into the curve of learning and start delivering tomorrow. This particular aspect will take time. You will have to give time to the private industry. You will have to give time to the startups. It has begun. It began last year. It has been consolidated this year, and it will go on. And I'm very sure that the kind of talent that we have in this country, we will find the domestic defense industry, really coming up. And not only we will become Atmanirbhar, but also we will start exports. We are already doing it. I think we all know about that BrahMos deal with Philippines, where 375 billion USD worth of BrahMos cruise missiles are being sold to them. So we are getting on to being an export-oriented defensive country, nation with so the issue is that we have to ensure that this private industry, that the startups, that all these people are encouraged. And not only encouraged, you will invest money only when you will find that you're getting returns, the kind of returns that you're looking at. So you'll have to ensure that they get their market. So this is a very important aspect which has come out loud and clear from this year's defense budget. Another thing is, getting into a manufacturing of the naval platforms. We have, that's why you would notice that the Navy's budget has gone up 45%, 47%, because we are manufacturing state-of-the-art naval platforms which are there. And those state-of-the-art naval platforms are ready. We have Ariant class of the submarine, P-75 nuclear submarines. We have the aircraft carrier which is in the pipeline. We have got many such top-end things. So this is the thing which is going to take you ahead as far as the thing is concerned in time. Now, the R&D part of the whole thing, the R&D part of the whole thing is in collaboration with the DRDO. There is also a provision of setting up an independent nodal umbrella agency, which will facilitate doing things, or in fact, it will act as a bridge between the industry and the government agencies. And also, this is required for certification and knowing assessing the technology that is being thought of in terms of your research and development. So it is testing and certifying new technologies is going to be the exam. It is something like, in the case of space, for the first time we opened up space for the industry, and we created ISPA. So I'm sure this agency is also going to be on the similar lines as ISPA, and it will act as an important thing between the government and the DRDO. And let us hope that we take long strides towards Atmanirbharta as far as defense production is concerned. But remember, the industry cannot produce things overnight. It cannot start giving you the goods immediately. We have to wait. This is a long-term plan as far as the defense budget is concerned. It has got long-term implications, but we will have to go on doing this. The only issue that I am trying to tell you is that no bureaucratic hassles. I'm very clear in talking. We have embarked on a good journey, but these things should not scuttle an outstanding step which has been taken. No matter who the government is, this must go on. Only then you will be able to reap the benefits of what you are trying to achieve here.
Yes, sir. I do agree with you, sir.
Yeah, you have to. But yes, I'll tell you what. Why I was about to come to that. The issue is that why the armed forces are at times not able to spend the money. 2-3 reasons. One, and the most important reason to my mind, whether somebody likes it or not, is unnecessary bureaucratic. The procedures are so long. It takes years. You are looking at a cutting edge technology. That technology becomes obsolete in 2 years. You started the project today. By the time the project fructifies, it is 5 years and the technology has become obsolete. It has no meaning. So we have to devise a way by which we can cut down on that time. Second important reason why we could not utilize the money which was set aside was that 58% last time was to be procurements from the defense, from the domestic market. But domestic market probably because of the COVID situation and many other reasons could not keep up the supply, could not keep up. And you want to do it. If the same money was there, and if you were procuring things from outside India source, maybe it would have fructified. So there are so many other things which matter. What we need to do is we need to look at a fresh look at the defense procurement procedures. And I'm glad that it is happening. In 2020 they were revised, and they are again under some kind of revision. But
yes, sir.
Three things I would like to very quickly before I end. I would like to tell you what all has been done to push India to Atmanirbharta in defense in this budget. And this budget actually is a consolidation of what we did in the first year of this decade. And this decade is going to be the decade that will decide your Atmanirbharta in case of defense corridor. The three things. One is allotting 68% cap on procurements from domestic sources. That will, but again, the domestic industry has to play up. Just because you want to promote Atmanirbharta, you cannot remove the Nirbharta on the defense forces by not giving them the kind of equipment and things which they want, because Chinese and Pakistanis are going to be more and more belligerent in times to come. They will leave no opportunity to create confusion in the Northeast, in the Red Corridor, R&D, J&K. You need to keep your armed forces equipped, well poised to be able to take on a 2.5 front war. Second thing is the 25% R&D. And third thing, the industry being encouraged to participate, and finally establishment of that industry, that agency, which is an umbrella agency, which is going to be an umbrella agency. As I said in the beginning, AMU, it has nothing to do with the university.
Yes, sir.
An arrogant and assertive China, both along the line of control and in the Indian Ocean region. A malicious Pakistan, who himself, they are down the drain. You know what has happened to them a couple of days ago. Hundreds of their soldiers, including a major general, have been killed. They will not. They and the unstable Afghanistan. That is the geopolitical reality of great India, great Bharat. And if that is the geopolitical reality, they will continue to trouble you both externally and internally. And you have to keep your armed forces well equipped, well oiled, well prepared. I can guarantee you no other army could have done what has happened post 2020 when Galwan happened. When the Galwan happened, thousands of troops were pushed into those heights with minus temperatures, and without putting any drain and strain of any budget or anything, they have survived 2 years. They have thrown away the chinks and they are occupying. But you need now, if they have to be maintained there, you need the equipment which will make them sustain, weapon systems which will give them the edge. So that is what, and this is a great progressive budget, a futuristic budget,
right, sir,
and a budget which promises our journey, a rapid one, strides into an Atmanirbhar Bharat as far as defense industry is concerned. Not only Atmanirbhar Bharat, but also a Bharat which will become an exporter of arms. We continue to be the third largest spender of in the defense and second largest importer of equipment, arms and equipment.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for energizing us and making us abreast on this national security concern. Now invite our next panelist, Dr. Badri Narayan Gopal Krishnan, the lead advisor and head, Trade and Commerce Niti Aayog, to give us a perspective on the policy framework which has been taken into account while the Budget 2022 document was prepared. He will be sharing his views on the topic, Industrial Growth Initiatives for Progressive India. Dr. Gopal Krishnan, I would like to mention, has been leading the work on trade and commerce policy strategies for NITI Aayog by coordinating with different ministries, mainly commerce, finance, state government. His broad expertise areas are for the analysis of business strategy and public policy, employing a variety of quantitative models. He has been an independent consultant with several organizations, including McKinsey, IMF, World Bank, Howard University. And in order to mention more, I'm sure he will be able to enrich us about the focus areas of Budget 2022. And I'm also sure the audience would also like to know whether Mr. Gopal Krishnan based models and data sets which he has prepared in Global Trade Analysis Project will be used by thousands of researchers across the world, can also be used to decode the Budget 2022. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction, and I also thank the respected co-panelists for their very insightful
Sir, sorry to interrupt, sir. Can you be a little bit more louder?
Yeah, can you hear me better now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So yeah, I just wanted to thank my respected co-panelists for their wonderful thoughts, and thank you for the introduction, and I thank the university management for organizing this amazing event, and I'm sure it will all these discussions that we are having here will enlighten the students, and also encourage faculty members and others to learn more about the budget and how it's affecting the economy, business, and our lives. So in terms of some broad policy aspects that are considered in the budget, just thinking at a very high level, the first aspect is policy stability. So in these uncertain macroeconomic situation that we have both globally and here, because of the Omicron and the supply chain shortages, inflation, and so on, the least we want to do is to create another uncertainty with the policies being totally different from before. So in that sense, the Honorable Finance Minister has pretty much stuck to the policy measures that were introduced in the budget last year, 2021. So there is a lot of policy stability. So we are just going deeper and more extensively in the same direction. And also the Honorable Finance Minister explicitly mentioned that the budgets of this year and the last year should be taken together. A lot of the announcements that were made in the last budget, they also continue in this budget. So we have to take these two budgets in conjunction with each other. So I think that is a great feature here. We have policy stability, and another very important aspect is that which is a matter of debate and controversy among the people and different political parties and so on. And that is, there are not a lot of populist measures in this budget, and that is a very interesting thing, given that elections are coming up. So the government could have easily done a lot of populist things, a lot of subsidies and so on, but they did not do that, which is a very commendable thing. I would think, because in this uncertain macroeconomic situation, the least we want is a huge fiscal deficit, and also reduced incentives for efficiency in the economy. If you don't have enough incentives for innovation and efficiency, because of excessive subsidies, that is going to hurt the economy even more. So and that's going to create a greater uncertain situation. So I think that is another very commendable aspect of the budget. And the third aspect, I think already discussed very extensively, is the infrastructure and the capex, the capital expenditure. And again, this is a very exciting set of announcements on a lot of different infrastructure projects, which I don't have to go in deeply because a lot of people have already discussed. Many of you have seen that, but I would like to understand more at a high level again. So with the infrastructure projects, the capital expenditure projects, you're facilitating the whole economy. You're increasing the efficiency across the board in all sectors, large companies, MSMEs, exports, across the board they're going to be benefited because you're increasing the efficiencies in the transportation, in logistics, in all of the aspects of infrastructure. And this coordination between different modes of transportation. All these things are part of it, Gati Shakti and so on. So I think that is a major push. And I think here there are two aspects here. The one aspect is that in economics, in macroeconomics, we study about crowding in of investment. The public investment has the capacity to crowd in private investments. There is a debate whether it is going to crowd in or crowd out, but there is a clear-cut, clear-cut thought process in which you classify the things that can only be done by the government and things that can only be done by the private sector and things that can be done by a PPP, public-private partnership. So, if you're talking about like starting a bank or a port or some major facility in a remote village or a remote town, obviously the private sector won't even be interested. But the moment the public sector creates something, a good example in this regard is Gift City in Gujarat. That is not a very prominent location. The private sector wouldn't probably go there and do it if you just tell them that please come and do it. They're not going to do it. But the government can do a lot of it. And once the government steps in and sets up the infrastructure, then the private sector can come. Or there can be different projects, some of which can be completely driven by public capital expenditure. Some of it can be a combination of public and private, and some of it can be purely private. So, and in this way, you can have this crowding in of investments. So, if you carefully plan this, if you don't plan it very carefully, then if you, for example, get so excited and say that public sector will do everything, all the infrastructure projects will be done by the public sector. And then obviously it's going to lead to a crowding out. So private sector may not be able to enter. But if you have this careful calibration and thought process, it is going to be good. And in that regard, a lot of plans have been worked out, which are in line with what I just said, all this efficient allocation of who is going to invest in what. So I think that is very, very important. And another aspect is the capital expenditure in the past several years. It has always been a challenge of gap between what is announced and what is accomplished. And we have made a lot of improvements in the recent past. And I also think that this year also we are going to work on that. All the government bodies, we are all working together, including Niti Aayog, the state governments. We're all working together to make sure that all these announcements that are made are going to be practically implemented. So that's something that we all are striving to do. So that is very important. It's not just a matter of announcement. And again, as many of you might have noticed, this announcement has led to the markets also taking it very positively, getting positive cues from the market. You might have also noticed that there also have been some negative growth in bond yields, for example. But that is more to do with the global changes, like what is happening in the US and other countries, not local issues. And also another aspect of the budget is all about the revenue projections, the deficit. So what I feel is like the revenue projections are pretty conservative, and this is actually emphasized by both the Honorable Finance Minister and the Honorable Secretary, Revenue Secretary, that you have this revenue projections have been pretty conservative. We are likely to have much better revenue in reality, because and the government has been conservative because they worry about the energy prices. Given that energy prices are increasing a lot, they wanted to take into account the uncertainty there. But we have seen a lot of acceleration in the growth of tax revenue. So that is one thing, and also the other aspect is the coming to my main focus, which is trade, international trade, and particularly the manufacturing sector, industrial growth. So in industrial growth, all the things that I talked about so far, they're all going to lead to enhanced industrial growth, because if you have good infrastructure, that is going to positively help all the industries, including manufacturing industry. So now the thing is, what about industry specific focus? How do we ensure this Atmanirbhar Bharat goal is achieved? So on this, we have a multi-pronged approach. So one thing is this PLI, the Production Linked Incentive Scheme, which many of you already are familiar with, because it has been announced before and it's going on, and more has been allocated there. More sectors have been included, like 5G and so on. So that is one aspect. The second aspect is the transformation happening in terms of the special economic zones. So the special economic zones have had some limited success in the past. Now we are thinking of making it much more comprehensive, and really to promote exports, but at the same time keep it in line with the global regulations, like WTO, World Trade Organization's mandates and so on. So here we are going to focus on this enterprise and service hubs, and incentives for increasing the exports. And there are a lot of research done on this. Like Baba Kalyani Committee came up with a lot of recommendations. Like we should promote, like in order to promote exports, we have to look in terms of achieving scale in manufacturing, promoting technology, R&D, employment, etc. So all these things have to be taken into account in SECs, and that is what the Honorable Finance Minister said. And the next aspect is the being very careful and meticulous in terms of what do we do with the trade, with imports. So we want to, from a very basic economics point of view, imports are a double-edged sword, right? They are good. They are, or I would say, to probably to exaggerate it a little bit, we can call it a necessary evil, because we cannot produce anything and everything because of some practical reasons. Like we may not have certain resources, we may not have certain technologies, we may not have certain comparative advantages. In such cases, there is no point in forcing ourselves to produce certain things, so we can import them. On the other hand, we have the capacity, we have the ability, we have the potential to produce things. So then we should obviously substitute imports. We should produce and we should rather export. It's a very, very simple thought process. So, but what is very difficult in practice is to identify which sectors should we focus on, importing, which sectors we focus on controlling the imports. So here the budget has done really very careful consideration. So a lot of inputs which are difficult to manufacture in India, they have been their tariffs have been reduced. Things like some types of steel, some of the capital goods, and some of the minerals, even the things like gold, and all these things have become the tariffs have been reduced, and tariffs have been increased for some other goods for which we have capacity, like umbrellas, imitation jewelry, and many other things. So both have been done here. As a trade economist, and many of my people with my background, my colleagues, they would say that no matter what, you have to liberalize trade completely. You have to allow all the imports to come in. But we have, in practice, that is not possible. We have to have a calibrated approach. And what I really appreciate in the budget is it has taken a very comprehensive and calibrated approach. We are not aggressively reducing import tariffs, and we are also not aggressively increasing import tariffs. So we are taking the middle path, and we are taking a very sector-specific approach. So I think that is a very, very important thing. So one example is the electronic sector. So electronic sector is something that is kind of an emerging giant of Indian industry. Electronic manufacturing has been growing very rapidly. So this is actually a result of government initiatives like the PLI, the Production Linked Incentive Scheme. Just to give a little bit of motivation for PLI scheme, many years ago we used to have a lot of subsidies meant for capital. So I know some industrialists who approached me when I was a consultant, and they would say that I used this scheme that the government had, and that is basically about providing capital subsidies, and I used the subsidy and purchased my machineries, and I hardly spent any money on it because it was a huge subsidy. And now that I have the machineries, what should I do? I don't know what to produce. And so, at least some of them were like at least that careful that, okay, we got something, we have to produce something. But many of them would just take advantage of this. Okay, we got this machineries, and let's just enjoy. We don't have to do anything. We can keep buying machineries and we can make money out of it, like get the free subsidies. So that was a very, very kind of a failed attempt, although the intention was to promote capital and investment, but that didn't work out. So now the government said, let's link the incentives with the production. All the tax rebates and subsidies, they should be given only if the production is done and there is some proof for production. So that is how the production has been expanding. Many of you may probably know that we have, for example, a facility for Apple, iPhones manufacturing facilities in India now, and many such things are there. And for them, to facilitate them, the government, Honorable Finance Minister, has announced a lot of reduction in tariffs, reduction in custom duties for them. And I think similar things I can talk about other many sectors, like chemicals and so on. And again, MSMEs, there are a lot of schemes announced. For MSMEs, a major challenge for them is credit availability. And I'm really very happy to see the emphasis given by the Honorable Finance Minister on this credit guarantee and different schemes there, the RAMP scheme and so on. So all these things are going to help the MSMEs because, as many of us know, the MSMEs have been suffering for some time for various reasons, both pre-COVID and post-COVID. Post-COVID, actually across the world, and pre-COVID in some other countries, including India. But now with all these schemes, it has become like a blessing in disguise. And sometimes when you have crisis, you try to come up with solutions that work in the longer term. like the respected co-panelists mentioned, respected Major General and others mentioned before. In conclusion, I would like to say that this budget is a very medium to longer term focused budget. So a lot of the positive impact of the budget will be known after some time, after all this capex is made, and you can see the impact. But at the same time, there are a lot of also immediate reliefs and immediate measures. A lot of the announcements that are made last year in the midst of pandemic, they're going to continue for some more time. So in that sense, it's a very nice balance between today and tomorrow. It really emphasizes on tomorrow. We want to have a very strong tomorrow, but at the same time, we have to do well today. We have to survive first today, and then do well tomorrow. So that's the focus of this budget at a very, very, very high level. If you like to summarize in one kind of sentence, and I'm very happy, to see that also. Just to let everyone here know, the budget, is based on inputs from a large number of people in the government and also with a lot of stakeholders. So we, people like us in other organizations in the government, like Niti Aayog and so on, we also provide a lot of inputs, and we were also happy to see that a lot of inputs provided by all of us also came into the budget. So it's a very positive thing, and
yes, sir. Indeed,
we are
it's a
going
positive
to
aspect
see,
and outlook. So
yeah,
you have very
so
briefly mentioned us about the industry perspective, the changes in the industry. We do agree that the role of MSME sector can't be ignored. So with this note, thank you, sir, for joining us today. Now, let's move on to the next panelist. Before mentioning about his brief profile, we can't ignore the importance of banking
lot of
sector in
stakeholders.
today's era.
So we
Banking, financial services, and insurance is growing exponentially in India due to the rising per capita income, introduction of new products, innovation in technology, expanding distribution, networking, and increasing customer awareness of financial products. As we all seen that BFSI industry has seen bold reforms in the last 15 years and will continue to be top priority focus industry for India's economic development based on inclusive growth. Now, it's my pleasure to invite Mr. Balasubramaniam, our Vice President, Credit Analysis Unit, HSBC. I'm sure he will be able to give us banking industry perspective while discussing on the topic BFSI, the backbone of economic superpower India. Mr. Balasubramaniam is an expert on digital revolution, design thinking, and entrepreneurship. And sir, it will be indeed a pleasure to listen to your views on the banking industry perspective. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just take a minute at the outset. I would like to thank the Vice Chancellor, N.T. Rao, the Pro Vice Chancellor, Sri Baba, the University School of Business Director, Mr. Nilesh Arora, Professor Pardeep Kumar, yourself, Harsimran Kaur, and the distinguished panelists. Thanks for this opportunity. And more importantly, would like to thank and encourage all the energetic and enthusiastic students who are there listening to this program. They are going to be the future torchbearers of Chandigarh University and of course, India as well. Thank you all. I'll try and keep my session as brief as possible. For the students, if you are a little bit more interested, you can look at my brief overview of the budget, which I had shared on LinkedIn. It's just a 5-page document. If you are keen, you can look at it, and then we can talk about that on a separate session as well. What I will basically try and do is try and look at some of the elements which Mr. Rao said. Rather than looking at all the number elements, let's look at what could benefit the students. So one of the important elements when we talk of BFSI as such, they are the backbone of any economy, not just India, any economy. So we need to understand why banks and the entire financial services and the insurance are the backbone. The very first principal element that students need to understand is that this sector is a partner. They are the partner to the monetary policy of the central bank, and they are the partner in the economic policy of the federal government and the state governments. It is because of this partnership role that they play, they are considered to be the backbone of any economy. That's the very first important point that all students need to be aware of and cognizant of as well. On top of this, they play a very important role of trusteeship in terms of ensuring that the household savings get channelized in an appropriate manner to various sectors of the economy to ensure that the credit flow happens smoothly at various points in time. That is a second important element that all of us need to be cognizant of. Thirdly, from Indian context, the entire BFSI sector is also considered as a strategic sector from a disinvestment point of view as well. And fourthly, as all of us would have seen, like in the past, in the last 2 years as well, the BFSI sector has played a stellar role in terms of managing the overall economy along with the central bank and the policymakers of the government to ensure that household savings plus the credit flow is taken care of, and then the overall economy could be supported. These are some of the critical elements that the sector constantly plays. They've been playing in the past, they're playing now, and they'll continue to play in future as well. Now let's look at when we're talking of the BFSI sector, within this three broad elements: banking, financial services, and insurance. Banks are generally the biggest in most of the countries, and in India as well, banks are the very biggest within the sector, and roughly 50% of credit to GDP flows from the banking sector. And two important elements, if we need to look at the bank's point of view, we can look at banks from a liability side and we can look at banks from a asset side as well. One important point I would like to call out here is that in 2021 budget, there was a change to the DICGC framework, etc., to support and provide insurance to the deposits. In the budget, we moved away from 1 lakh to 5 lakh coverage, which was a milestone event last year. And then because of which roughly close to 50% of the accessible deposits are covered by insurance in the Indian context now, compared with the global average of between 25 to 30%, which also signals the intention of the policymakers to strengthen the banking sector and also reassure the strength of the banking to the retail households as well. So this is an important milestone development that happened in last year's budget. Second point is that what they have also done is that they've ensured that the moment there is a problem with the bank, it takes time to repay the depositor. So there was a policy change that was brought in, which was very customer friendly or depositor friendly. So the DICGC will first make the payment to the various depositors whenever there's a problem. And then that will be managed between the bank and the DICGC at a later point in time. These were the two critical milestone developments that were introduced in last year's budget. The benefit of that will continue to happen in the future years. Then when we look at on the liability side as well, banks are adequately and well capitalized in the Indian context now. The entire scheduled commercial banks, which includes the public sector banks, the private banks, etc., all of them are well capitalized at a sectoral level. And then they have the capacity to take on more credit and provide more credit in the future years. That's an important development that we need to look at. When we look at on the asset side, what's very important is that with the various policies that the government had introduced and the RBI over the last 2 years, banks continue to provide credit. And more importantly, between April 2021 and now December 2021, we see that bank credit has gradually started picking up. And in December 2021, the growth was roughly around 9% vis-a-vis 2020. So that's an important thing that we are able to see. That means that the credit pickup is happening within the economies as well. Now, what is very important is that as part of this, the government has introduced some new elements as part of this budget. We'll come to that a little later. Now, this credit pickup is what is very, very critical, along with the capex that has been talked of by the other panelists as well. This credit element has to play a very important role. And credit to who is the next big question that all of us would like to ask. What is also we are seeing is that the credit to the agricultural sector, the credit to the small scale sector, the credit to the medium scale sector. This is where the credit has flown the last 12 to 14 months. And we see that all the large corporates have to some extent delevered themselves, and they have looked at other sources of funding so that they can manage their balance sheet very well. So this is a very, very subtle but very, very important change that is taking place in the Indian context. That means that as Tata Steel says, we also make steel. Like banks also can say that we also provide credit, and they have channelized credit to the right and required sectors because of certain policy initiatives as well. And this should definitely help the overall distribution of credit across the country as well. The other important development that happened in the last budget, and we are able to see the benefit of that over the course of 2021 and 2022 as well, is that the formation of the bad bank. And then we have this National Asset Reconstruction Company of India Limited, which was incorporated in September 2021. It took shape in a much better way in January 2022, and roughly 50,000 crores of bad loans have been transferred to this entity, which will be managed in the coming years to recover the bad debts as well. That means that by transferring the bad assets out of the banks, that means that asset quality will further improve, the reported asset quality, plus they will have adequate capital to look at fresh lending as well. These are some of the important elements that is happening both on the liability side and on the asset side. So that what happens is the banks can continue to provide credit, which is what Reserve Bank of India wants and which is what the government wants as well. Along with this, there are various other changes that are happening. And one of the important things that all of us are witnessing is the digital evolution that is taking place in the country. And what is very important is that 2 years or 3 years back, we had roughly around 142 banks who were a part of this UPI system, Universal Payment Interface System. And what we see now is that from 142, it has gone up to 274 banks. We see that a large proportion of the banking community and the banks are getting themselves integrated into the UPI system. That means that the benefits of all these things is going to trickle down to people across the country, and then the payment system will become even more efficient. Availability of credit will become much more easier, and it will become much more easier for people to manage things digitally rather than handling cash. So these are some of the things that are happening on the bank side. If we need to look at from the NBFI sector, roughly the NBFI sector is also quite amorphous, and then we have a number of players within the NBFI sector. But if we need to look at the top 300 or 350 entities, etc., all of them play a very important role. And this sector has grown over the years as well. And then roughly they provide close to 13 to 14% of the credit of the economy as well. That means that the non-bank financial sector also plays a very important role in terms of providing credit to various other segments of the economy. That's also an important point. This sector is also adequately capitalized. Their NPL levels are manageable. And then with the changes that have been introduced as part of this budget, which I'll come to shortly, they are going to continue to benefit, and then the credit will trickle down to flow. Two or three critical things that have happened as part of this budget. One is that the continuation of the emergency line credit guarantee scheme, which will continue up until March 2023. That is the first point. The most important point is that the quantum has also been increased by 50,000 crores. The overall guarantee amount that will be available is 5 lakh crores. So this will propel banks to continue to support the small and medium scale industries. Then the other part is the credit guarantee trust for the micro and small enterprises. This also would potentially create another 2 lakh crores, which has been estimated by the economic survey. So there is going to be more credit to the small and micro industries as well. Also, there is this fine nuance of introduction of the infrastructure status. Infrastructure status has been introduced for the data centers as well as the energy storage systems as well. So by giving a tag of infrastructure to these two particular segments of the economy, we could see more increased flow of credit to these two sectors as well. And on top of this, with the NARCL formation as well, we could anticipate and we could expect more credit flowing into the economy from the banks as well as the NBFIs. When we need to look at the insurance sector, India's insurance sector has come a long way. There was a time when all the companies were nationalized, and then we started seeing the first issuance of privatization sometime in 1999 and 2000. The first private sector life insurance and non-life insurance licenses were provided in 2000. And then over the last 20 years, we have seen how the sector has evolved, and we've also seen a number of companies which have got themselves listed on the stock exchanges. We're also going to see LIC going to come out with its IPO as well. Two important determinants are there when we need to look at the insurance sector. One is the insurance penetration, and the other one is the insurance density. As students, you always need to look at what is the insurance penetration and what is the insurance density. And there are nuances when we need to look at a life insurance company, when we need to look at a non-life insurance company, and then when we need to look at a reinsurer. India is playing a very good and important role in terms of the driving the insurance sector as well. The IRDAI has brought in various policies at various points in time, which has helped to propel the growth of the insurance sector as well. The insurance sector also is on a solid footing in terms of the solvency ratios and the overall performance as well. So if we need to integrate all these elements together, and if we need to talk of the BFSI sector as such, there were challenges to this sector in the past, but over the last few years, the sector has overcome various challenges. And I think in the current context, the entire BFSI sector, in terms of both the capital, the amount of risk that they have in the books, and the kind of operational risk and the kind of technological focus that they have, they're all well positioned in terms of how they can continue to contribute to the growth of the economy in the coming years. Maybe I'll stop here, keeping in view the conscious of the overall time as well. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing your views. I would like to invite other panelists for a brief discussion. Thank you, sir. So you rightly mentioned about the key areas. Now I would like to move on to our next panelist, Mr. Mohammed Mateen, ex-Senior Vice President, FNA, CEE at Berger Paints India Limited, British Paints Division. He has worked in all areas of business operations. He will be sharing his perspective on fiscal prudence. Maintaining fiscal discipline is essential to maintaining macroeconomic stability, reducing vulnerabilities, and improving aggregate economic performance. His topic of discussion is balancing fiscal prudence with increased spending to accelerate growth. It will be a pleasure to listen to you, sir.
Thank you, Kaur.
Thank you.
Good afternoon to all of you. It is indeed a pleasure to share this platform with so many co-panelists from different fields. In fact, I'm very happy that my job has become very easy when I heard the opening remarks of Vice Chancellor N.T. Rao, when he said that this particular session is to understand how budget is practiced, how it is used in real life. So what I have done, I prepared my talk exactly on the same line. By the time I finish my talk, I would like to have answer with the audience whether the current deficit financing of deficit budget is a prudent fiscal policy paper with increased spending to accelerate growth or not. So that is the purpose of today's paper. Now, in order to appreciate whether the current budget is fiscally prudent, let's take some, go back to the history, because unless you understand the history, the past, you will not be able to appreciate what government is doing. At the same time, let me also say before I come to my talk that our Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has done a wonderful job. She has put up a very bold, pragmatic, resilience budget, which has got a lot of agility with the uncertainty. So with this, I just want to give the background of the fiscal deficit for the knowledge of all those who are students, because I understand most of the participants are students. So for their benefits, see, in our country, the modern story of India's fiscal prudence budget begins with the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act, that is called FRBM, in 2003. This act looked to impose fiscal discipline in the economy, improve the management of public funds, and reduce the fiscal deficit. This act, which subsequently underwent revisions, suspensions, reinstatement, targets aimed through a committee for a fiscal deficit target of 3% of GDP. So what India did, India set a target for itself, a 3% deficit, 3% of the GDP. Now, at this point, let me offer a simple clarifying definitions. The fiscal deficit is the annual difference between the total expenditure and total expenditure of the government. A deficit means the government is borrowing to cover its expenditure. In the pre-pandemic era, the government did an excellent job to bringing down the fiscal deficit. Indeed, the fiscal deficit reduced from 4.9.3% of GDP in financial year 2012 to 3.42% in financial year 2009. So you can appreciate that our country was on the right path. We were following a very prudent deficit financing. But that's again a but. But then the pandemic hit and the public finances understandably went for a toss with lockdowns, a global slowdown, and supply chain disruptions on one side, and necessary stimulus-led recovery on the other. The fiscal deficit shot up to 9.5% of GDP in financial year 21. Public debts expanded to 90% of the GDP. I mean, it's too much. Therefore, the current fiscal deficit, which our finance minister has proposed, of 6.9% represents a considerable consolidation of government finances. I say we are on the right track. Therefore, the target for current year is 6.4% of GDP. The question comes here, is it a prudent budget? So if you want to answer this question, I would like to take you to three very important factors. The first factor is the state of the economy. If you want to decide whether the current 6.4% is sufficient, adequate, or excess, you have to first of all find out where do we stand as an Indian economy? How are we doing? What are the challenges? And then comes the why the government has relied on long-term investment stimulus. Why did they not go for the short term? Why they did not go for the direct cash transfer, which is talked about by many economists in the world, that India should have followed the direct cash package, which India did not follow. And the third one is, what are the uncertainties in headwinds in the coming fiscal year? So we have to study all three parameters, and it's only after studying all the three parameters we can get the answer whether our current fiscal budget is prudent or not, whether it is going to bring acceleration in the economic activity or not. So let's start with the first parameter, that is called the state of the Indian economy. So if you see state of Indian economy, both the IMF and the World Bank have projected that India will be the fastest growing country in the world this year. Government expects a growth rate of 9.2% of GDP this fiscal year. And this after a contraction of 7.3% in financial year 21, followed by a stimulus-led recovery of 9.2% in financial year 22, shows that the Indian growth engine has a strong foundation. So one thing is very clear, that our economy is on a strong recovery path. Let's not doubt about that. Where does this growth come from? If you look around in our industries, we find manufacturing has remained robust. With the PMI, you must be knowing PMI is a Purchasing Managers Index. PMI consistently staying above 50. The service sector too has been expanding, is exceeding 50%. Merchandise exports are all-time high. I think it is said that we are going to cross last year budget by this end of the month. So what we have found that, and then tax revenue. Tax revenue was 73.5% of the budget estimate from April to November, which is and GST collections have crossed the 1 lakh crore mark over several months. The shift to an online integrated system and plugging of the loopholes has enabled a strong tax collection figures and reduced tax evasion. So what we see these are all good news. This gives us confidence that our economy is on recovery. However, that is a challenge. But the other data suggests that we have a K-recovery. K-shaped recovery. It's not a V-shaped recovery, where some sectors and income classes are doing better than the others not doing well. So what are challenges do we have? What are challenges do our country has before fixing the budget deficit? The challenges are capacity utilization in the private sector is currently only 60 to 70%. And that is why private investment is not coming in the economy. Private consumption is depressed, especially at the bottom of the pyramid. Therefore, we do not expect private investment to rise in the short run. This means that some parts of the economy, such as constructions and retail trade, are doing well. Others, such as hospitalities, are struggling. These imbalances need to be redressed to ensure strong growth. So the government is targeting a V-shaped recovery. The challenge is to avoid a K-shaped recovery. And I'm optimistic because of the resilience of the India's economy. We have had 2 previous waves. And while we have faced losses, our economy has remained strong. Now we move to the second point, that is called why government, this budget has given a lot of emphasis to deficit financing, that is in the form of the long-term investment initiatives. So, since in the absence of the private investment and weak consumption demand, the government needs to step in. There can be 2 kinds of stimulus expenditures: short-term transfers versus long-term investment. Economics suggests a tension between these 2 options. Money should be put where it is most efficiently used. Short-term transfers have the benefit of providing immediate relief to households. However, they do not create productive capacity. The hope is that transfers can restart the engine of growth. That is why there are economists, they say that let's go for the direct tax transfer, because it will bring immediate recovery. Even number of industrialists, they are still promoting this concept. So long-term investments, on the other hand, create productive capacity. They have the potential to generate jobs both directly, indirectly, by helping businesses. In addition, very important point, normally we ignore credit rating agencies. look, and that is very clear from the numbers. Capital expenditure is very prudent. They are trying to reduce the subsidy, which are not directly helping the economy. Rather, they are making the economy inefficient. So to make, the question comes here, the government will ask the question to themselves. To make more efficient use of this capital, government will ask itself the following questions. Is the investment having high multiplier? Deficit financing, Keynesian theory says, as you borrow money and finance the projects, it has a multiplier effect. It also got a that is called marginal propensity to consume. As people income increases, they consume more. So the first question is the investment having high multipliers? Does it generate job? Does it stimulate other sectors? So if all goes well, growth will be stimulated. But in this environment, nothing can be taken for granted. So let us discuss the third point, that is called headwinds to the economy. I mean, what are the risk factors do we have while proposing a prudent fiscal deficit? The danger with the government stimulated growth comes from the global inflationary environment. India currently has a wholesale price index of about 14%. The world is reeling from high inflation, and most notably the US, which has been affected by supply chain disruptions, starting from the ports of China to truck drivers in the US. Whereas you will be laughing, even truck drivers are not available in USA. Geopolitical factors in Ukraine may lead to oil prices high. So an overheated economy in India may be difficult to handle since the inflation has a multiple sources. Everybody in the world, including America, they're all afraid of the inflation, its consequences. For a country like India, it will be a very difficult task for them to manage the effect of inflation. Lastly, but very importantly, we are still not out of the woods with COVID. We have a little idea about future waves, and while more medicines and treatments are now available, we have learned the very hard way that nothing can be taken for granted with the pandemic. Having gone through the